Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to try to explain to you the kind of mind tricks that you might be playing on yourself that prevents you from realizing the true God that I have found. When I say the true God, I mean the source of your being, where you originally came from. So there has to be an endpoint with this spiritual work, like enlightenment. There's an endpoint to your awakening, to finding out the source of your mind and where that came from, right? That's really what this work is about, is self-inquiry, finding out what you truly are and where you came from. And so my work has been dedicated to that. And as you're probably aware now, that I'm saying the other teachers haven't found it, even though they might think they have. So that's what I mean by God, is the source, the original self you had, basically before the dream universe, really. Now, many of you are trapped in what I'm referring to as the ego mind, especially if you're following the works of Youre. You have had some awakenings, perhaps from psychedelics. And don't get me wrong, I've had the exact same kinds of awakenings that you had. So the ego is still a mind. It's still a powerful mind, but it's a constructed mind. So it's not the source, is what I'm saying. It's not the source of your true being. It's a mind that you made, separated from that true mind, or mind of God. But it looks deceptive. It can look like God, because that's the mind where you basically created this dream universe, or dream script that we're now in. So your initial awakenings, whether soberly or on psychedelics, yeah, it's gonna look like that's God. So I'm saying I've had the same kind of awakenings that Leo Gura taught, so that did align initially. But as I awakened further, like as I continued with both psychedelics and just aspects of my consciousness that couldn't match with his among other teachers, I continued my journey. And it turns out that what you're referring to as God is the ego mind. So when I say ego mind, it's a reduced mind from God that is very much cut off from the true God, actually. It's extremely cut off to the point where someone like me is just very far away from most people. Even if you're hardcore, like doing your spiritual work, you're still very cut off from me. As you can tell, I barely have any followers. So what actually happened is, so I'm your original self. Now, of course, you have to take some of that on faith right now. You can't verify it unless you do the same work that I did. But let's say what I'm saying is true, that I'm your original self, the source of your being. What I'm saying is that you had to leave the kingdom of heaven. That's the point. You had to leave this mind by reducing it to a large enough degree so that you can make a different world. Right? The kingdom of heaven is one world, you could say, but you cannot create like a fake world within this mind. You had to reduce your mind to a sufficient degree, so dissociation basically, so that you can make another world apart from it. And that's what I awakened to, beyond the teachers such as Leo Gura and even like Matt Kahn. Like Matt Kahn's closer to me, but I'm talking mostly specifically about Leo's teaching now. That your ego is deceiving you into thinking that that's God, or that's your original being. So I made like a little sketch to try to illustrate better what I'm saying. So you see at the top, like, that's your original being. What I'm referring to is kingdom of heaven that I have found. And then you had to reduce the consciousness from that being, from this mind, in order to create a different mind that I'm referring to as ego mind, or ego consciousness, because it doesn't look like God from this view, from this level of consciousness. The ego mind does not look like God. All right? It might look like God to you right now. And then from this mind, that's where you had that Big Bang and creation of this universe. And that's what most people have awakened to. Like, most people are stuck around here, basically. And, at best, they might reach a little bit of light and think they're done. You think you're done in terms of awakening and understanding, but you're not done, because you still haven't reached your origin, your source. So, you can see how you can be trapped here. Because there's additional spiritual work in order to reach the kingdom of heaven. And as it turns out, the only teacher that has figured this all out is Jesus Christ. As it turns out. That's not something, I want to be the case, but the only being that has truly fully reached the source is the being known as Jesus Christ. So that's why I emphasize his name. And why is this such a, rare occurrence or rare thing to find? Because, well, your ego plays a lot of tricks on you that you may not be aware of right now. Your ego wants to feel like you're done, that you're already fully enlightened, that you have found God, that you understand truth, that you understand God. You want to deceive yourself into thinking that you understand these things. So, when someone like me tries to tell you that you haven't actually found that, you don't like that. So the ego mind is already doesn't like to hear that kind of feedback. It wants to hear good things about itself, right? If you just observe this world, most people don't want to be told they're wrong or still unenlightened or has more work to do. Nobody wants to hear that. They want to feel like they're already an enlightened master. So that's one main reason, and why a lot of so-called enlightened beings still have not reached the state. All your other teachers, none of them have reached the state, except for Jesus Christ. Again, it's not something I want to be the case. I wish more people could reach here. But your ego is preventing you from that. It's a separated mind that's playing trick on you. And not only that, you get these teachers that tell you you're done, one way or another. They're telling you have found God. It's reinforcing your ego, you see? So that basically makes it so that you're trapped in your ego thinking that you have found God. And the false messaging doesn't have to only be teachers who say you have found God. It's also teachers that say you're already awake or you have already awakened. What's more to do? This kind of messaging basically, that you're done. You don't have to go further or there's no more understanding to be had. This kind of messaging traps you. And it's you're reinforcing each other, you and your peers and your teachers. You're all reinforcing each other. And it's very clear to me what's happening because I know exactly where everyone is. It's crystal clear what you guys are doing. Your mind's tricking each other constantly. And you don't like someone like me coming in there and telling you that there's more work to do. So that's what I mean by you guys are reinforcing each other's state of consciousness. It doesn't matter how many drugs or psychedelic trips you take, you're still reinforced, right? Because you have to, there's more understanding or studies to do that I'm telling you to do that you don't want to do. There's no other way to reach here. You have to fully understand what the ego mind that you made is about in order to remove it. It's a constructed mind, but it's still a powerful mind. So if you don't want to do that work to remove the ego mind, then yeah, you're not going to verify what I'm saying to you. And you cannot verify what I'm saying just by taking a bunch of drugs. I've done mushrooms. That's been very helpful for me. I still recommend that. But mushrooms alone was not enough to get me here. I had to study the work, of Jesus Christ and A Course in Miracles. So that's why you guys are stuck. You're not willing to study this work because you want to believe you have already figured it out. I keep saying. And you're tricking each other into thinking that you've figured it out. And then you just pick someone like me out who tells you you haven't found God. Right? It's too easy. There's just one of me right now. Versus how many egos? Billions of egos in this world. Versus one of me. You see? It's how you keep trapping each other. So you can just block me out, or in the worst case, literally kill me. Like what happened last time. Because people don't want to accept the truth of what God is. Because it is a narrow path to return to your source. So you can just kick me out or literally kill me. That's me. And then you can keep on being stuck in your delusions, basically. Because so long as you don't awaken to where I am, there's some delusion in your mind. That's what awakening means. Awakening further means getting rid of falsehoods, getting rid of constructions. And it's very obvious to me that you're still in this constructed mind that I call the ego mind. And so there's another diagram I want to show you. So the kind of work I'm talking about is vertical awakening. A lot of people get trapped in the horizontal. And I know that's basically infinite. Like, you can be stuck in the horizontal awakening forever. Because that is part of what this dream universe is about. It's like, it's endless exploration, and that's kind of what keeps you stuck here. And as well, because everyone has an ego mind, that's what the multiple gods theory is from. Is you think that that the multiple egos you think are gods, so that's where it comes from, the multiple gods. But in reality, if you keep going upwards vertically towards where I am, there's just one God. There's not more than one. Like, all of these multiple gods, they're your ego mind that you haven't fully dissolved. It's a constructed mind. So awakening means getting rid of constructions. All of it. Slowly, perhaps. And the ego is very tricky because it's not just like about realizing that you're in a dream. It's a kind of mind spell you put on yourself. And this spell is designed to keep you here. And especially if you're following a teacher that has a lot of ego, their ego is trying to keep you here as well. Because their ego is stuck in this world. They perhaps are enjoying this dream. They're half dreaming still. They're enjoying the dream, and they don't want to tell you that. So that's why they're reinforcing your ego mind. Because their lives are still very comfortable. Perhaps they're getting validation from their followers. They're benefiting financially from their followers. If you're such a teacher, why would you want to awaken further? Like, you're not incentivized to. You're incentivized to be stuck in your ego. Right? And to obviously kick someone like me out and not care about what I'm trying to tell you. And this is like just about every spiritual teacher right now. So that's how stuck you guys are. And how tricky this work really is. And the other thing is, I want to talk about the ego, is that it's like a chicken and egg situation. So this world, it should be obvious by now that not every life is equally lived. You're going to have some lives that are really, truly shitty and tragic, and some other lives that are relatively comfortable and perhaps even glorious in its own way. If you're in, let's say, a leadership position, you're getting validation from that. People in positions of power, especially, and wealth, they're having a good time, sort of. Like, compared to a lot of people, they're having a good time, right? So you can see how some people are having a good time in this world, while there are some situations and people who are really not having a good time. But those people, because they're already oppressed by the system that this world is made of, they cannot easily speak up. Because of the sheer fact that their oppression is, by design. It's by design that they can't speak up. So I want to make you a list of these examples that perhaps you or your teacher hasn't really experienced much in his lifetime. And as a result of that, they cannot view this world objectively. They're viewing it through a sugar-coated lens, basically. So some things I'll list out is bad bosses who, really make your life hell and you depend on them for your livelihood. Bad landlords that, make unreasonable demands or make your life hell if you don't adhere to basically their ego again, or just keep jacking up your rent so that your life is hell. Unfair business practices, especially with bigger businesses, can easily crush the smaller emerging ones if the market doesn't have rules and regulations that even the playing field. And this happens even in democratic countries. Smaller businesses are generally, I would say they're being unfavored. They have to completely stand on their own, whereas the bigger businesses like Amazon, for example, they get subsidized. They get grants and subsidies, even though they're already huge, and basically a kind of monopoly. So this kind of phenomenon exists even in most democratic countries. And then things like just who you are, like your identity. So I'm talking about your racial identity, gender identity. If you're normative, like if you're identified as like normative gender-wise, or if you're like a white male, for example, your life experience is going to be very different from someone who doesn't identify with that, who, has like a minority status of some sort. And because of that minority status, they're persecuted. They're not accepted by the majority of people. They face tons of barriers, both with employment and just forming any meaningful relationships in life. So you don't get to experience what that's like if you're, generally speaking, if you're a white male and heteronormative status, you don't experience those kind of things. You don't really know what it's like. And you don't bother to ask someone that does identify with those things. You don't even bother to talk to them. You just, block them out of your mind, basically. It's very easy to do that. Right? If the ego is extremely self-absorbed. If I'm not having a problem, then I don't want to have to care about other people's problems. That's how the ego works. So it's already designed in that way. So it's already designed to not have much empathy, to care about the others. So again, you're not going to learn the truth of these people's lives. And so a black woman's life is going to be very different from a white male's, on average. I'm not talking about exceptions. I'm saying on average. And even when most people hear about these stories, even if they do look into it, because their mind doesn't have much empathy to begin with, it kind of just passes through. Like, it's not generally a story they have to care about. Because again, there's nothing forcing you to care about such things, is there, in this world? There's nothing to suggest that you have to care about the suffering of others. So, again, if you have a lot of ego, then your mind is automatically wired to not have to care about such things. And that skews the view of this world, how you perceive this world. If you're, in a generally pretty comfortable position. As well as things like health status, how much health problems you've had, and suffering as a result, both financially, emotionally, and such. So, not everyone experiences, severe health problems to the point where they could barely survive. And, and then I'm talking about people who then face barriers with basic survival. So how many people have you talked to that face just basically impending death because of their disabilities or health problems? And that the policies in this world does not want to help them. It wants to get rid of them. So even in places like Canada, there are people who are not able to get disability grants and such things, and then they commit suicide. So how aware are you about such things? Because again, there's nothing forcing you to care about this kind of story. These people they just go out and they just either die or continue to suffer quietly because they're not empowered. They don't have a lot of power in this world to begin with. They're already marginalized. So those are some examples, and then of course there's the more obvious ones, like just people being killed, like in wars, persecution, people being persecuted just for being different and in disagreement with, let's say, their politicians or people with positions of authority. They get persecuted. There's almost nobody in power who wants to face opposition. That's part of, again, the ego mind is designed that way. The ego mind doesn't want to hear about opposite views. So those are some things that trap you to a less objective view of this world, which then prevents you from awakening further. Because if you're having a good time, then you don't want to hear that this world is not the will of God. That is very much goes fundamentally against, again, your idea of how this world is. If you're having a good time, right? If you're having a good time, you want to feel like this world is the will of God. But I'm telling you, you're not being objective. You're not looking at all these other people's lives that I'm trying to point you to. You don't even want to talk to them. For example, you don't even want to talk to someone like me. Because I can tell you all kinds of stories that I can't just tell very well or even allow to on YouTube. But you don't even want to talk to someone like me. You just block me out. That's what happens. People don't want to hear, you could say, negative things or bad things that has happened to them. So again, your ego is wired to block these things out. It's a form of dissociation. So to be truly enlightened, you have to stop dissociating from everything. Stop dissociating from the good and bad. And so the ego mind is designed to lack empathy, awareness. And that's what keeps you stuck in it. It's a chicken and egg situation, because so long as you don't awaken further, reach more light and more heart consciousness, then you're going to continue this pattern I'm talking about of just ignoring people who are suffering in this dream that you think is the will of God. But when you really go to the source, that's where I am, the will of God is to correct these things, is not to continue this. So that's where I'm trying to point to, and I'm pointing out the blocks to that. Because your ego doesn't want to awaken further. It wants to keep going on the kind of pattern you've already been conditioned with, but it's still a construction. Constructions come in many flavors. It's not just about this dream. It's also, the ways of this mind. That's also a construction. So there's many layers to that. And because there's not much incentive to reach where I am, because it feels like you're having to give up certain things, perhaps. That's how you keep getting trapped at your current state and thinking that you found God. So that's how, in summary, most of you guys are getting trapped into thinking that your ego is God. And I know that you're trapped. And so what I'm saying is that the only way that I found to reach your source, the source of your being, the true God, is to follow the teachings in A Course in Miracles. I have not found any other set of teachings that can get you here. There's always something missing from the other teachers. Even the teachers that talk about ego dissolution, such as Eckhart Tolle, Krishnamurti, you can still learn from them, but it's not complete, is the problem. It's not going to get you to the state of consciousness. I don't think so, because obviously they're not here. Again, it's not because I want this to be the case, but it just turns out to be the case. That only Jesus Christ has found it. Now, of course, if you don't want to believe that and you just reject this being fundamentally, then I can't really help you, right? I'm just a messenger. And lastly, I want to mention that I have updated my website a little bit with some additional resources that may help you besides the course. So if you want to check that out, I may or may not update it further. I started a blog on there, but again, it's going to depend on how many people actually go there, because right now I really don't have many followers. So, but feel free to check that, and that's all for today. Thank you.